Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the town of Lincoln, and also to those of you who are tuning in through the Cogeco network. This is the first council meeting of the town of Lincoln, 2017, and the first meeting of the third year of this council, which is pretty remarkable in itself. Time really flies by. All right, I call this meeting to order and ask that you rise for the national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. For the benefit of those of you who haven't joined us before, I will quickly go through the roll call. Starting on my left is Councillor Paul McPherson. Next, Councillor Diane Rinchema, Councillor John Pachariva, and Councillor Wayne McMillan. On my right is Councillor Rob Foster. Councillor Dave Thompson is in a sunny place, so he's not here this evening. Councillor Lynn Timmers and Deputy Mayor Tony Brunet. And in the gallery on the right is Kathleen Dale, the Director of Planning. Beside her is Matt Bruder, the Manager of Planning Services, and Carrie Beattie, our Senior Communications staff. And on my right is, or my left is Mr. Mike Kirkopoulos, the CAO, and to my right is Mr. William Colossus, the Clerk of the Town of Lincoln. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest? There being none, I would like confirmation of the agenda. Any changes, any adjustments? Nothing? We move on to item number 6, which is the adoption of the previous council minutes of December 19th, 2016. I have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Rinchema, that the minutes of December 19th, 2016 regular meeting of council, including the confidential addendum thereto, be adopted as circulated. Councillors, are there any errors or omissions? Your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Councillors, is there any business arising from the minutes? There being none, we move on to the Mayor's report. Already, we start with such a busy agenda. It's amazing how quickly things are turning around, but it's all good. No question. We had a wonderful turnout to the New Year's levee and family skate. I think there must have been 400 and more people coming and going. It was really wonderful, and we are very grateful to the staff for the effort that they put into it and all those little touches that made it made it really special, and also to the Canada 150 committee that were there and clarifying for people some of the agendas that is going forward. And I think they've even picked up a few volunteers, which is very encouraging. Generational theme is really what this was all about, and there's no questions that families really appreciated being able to come, and the kids skated and the adults skated, and then everybody had a glass of wine or a beer or whatever was on their minds, and a few new businesses showcasing with the New Bench Brewery, and it was a very, very, very good day. January the 9th was the first meeting of the year. It was a planning meeting, and there certainly are no shortage of projects in the town. I'd like to report, although I don't know that this has been done in the past, that we have new representatives to 2 external committees related to the energy boards. One is Niagara Peninsula Energy, Inc. Councillor Thompson and I sit on that committee. And Peninsula West, which is the holding company. NPEI is the company that actually delivers the service. Peninsula West is the holding company. And Deputy Mayor Brunet and Councillor Foster sit on Penn West. I met with Trevor Donegan, who's a young lad who is in his last year of high school. He's been coming in and seeing me about the skate park. And of course, the skate park is on the capital list for completion this year. And we've also had some other interest shown to incorporate a bike pump into this project. But I just thought it would be worth noting, even though this is going to be coming to committee to be confirmed, that we continue to have youth interested in this project. Unfortunately, I think that Trevor represents the 3rd generation that's been looking at a park, but we're going to be going forward with a request for proposal for park upgrades, and certainly this project is on the list, there's no question. This past weekend was very busy with the Niagara Ice Wine Festival. On Friday night, my husband and I attended at the casino. It was a black tie affair. It was pretty fancy, really very lovely, and great representation. And I must say that Lincoln certainly was given some special recognition because we have the largest number of wineries in the Niagara Peninsula, and we don't mind puffing out our chests every time we can. Saturday, the TVA Wine Fest was just a bang-up affair. I think the number that I heard on Sunday morning was that there were 7,000 there on Saturday, that there were, I think, overall, we're looking at about 10,000 that attended. I heard Friday night there were 20,000 people in Niagara for the festival. So it certainly is on its way to being one of the places to be. And that started on Friday, and then on Saturday, Sunday. Other people will talk about more details and what they enjoyed about it. But my role is promoting the merchants, and so I do that with other people with the fashion show, and it really is quite something, and some of the clothes that you get to wear, and it's lots of fun. So I encourage everyone who's out shopping for clothes to look at what's available locally, because we have the full range from high-end boutique to consignment, and there's no reason to really be going and shopping anywhere else. We have it all here. It's really great. And last year, the last 2 years, I was there representing Tintern, but this year I was modeling for, if you could call it that, for Pamela's. Anyway, it was a great weekend. This Wednesday night, we're going to be having an update on the corporate work plan from the CAO, and there's some really important material that's going to be included in that meeting. And we have representatives here tonight, a delegation to talk about the coldest night of the year, so I will leave that to them. but I want to encourage staff and council to join the team so that we can have a good showing at the Grimsby High School. And of course, the mayors are in the heat of a great competition to see who can raise the largest amount of money, so I'll definitely need everyone's support. I would say at this time that with all that's been going on outside of Canada and even in our own country, that 2017 promises to be a very challenging year. We're very fortunate to live in a country and a province where we have access to government, and certainly local government is where you have the best access. So I encourage all of you to continue to maintain a positive outlook, to use that access to your greatest advantage. Try to influence what you can, and try and leave the outside rhetoric just there, outside of you and your family, because it's there just doesn't seem to be very much productivity in that whole morass. Your input and interest in Lincoln has been very encouraging as we enter year 3 of our mandate. Council embraces your input and makes every effort to lead by example. So I remind you that you live in Lincoln, where everyone strives to be a good neighbor, and where children are encouraged to achieve their very best. Thank you very much. The Regional Councillors report that I have this evening is quite short. The first meeting is this Thursday, January the 19th. I have another commitment, so I won't be attending. However, the dual duty councillor issue will be coming up for consideration by the Regional Council. And at the last Corporate Services meeting, we had a discussion on the waterfront investment, which will be very beneficial to Lincoln as we start looking at the waterfront along Prudhome's. And there's $1 million available. It's quite competitive, but we will have a compelling case to make, and we certainly will be entering into that with all kinds of energy for sure. We have a delegation this evening. No, we have councillor reports first. So where will I start? I'm going to start with Councillor Brunet, who's now entering into his the next quarter as the deputy mayor. Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Mary, and I'll be very brief. I just wanted to reiterate some of your already sentiments about the levy. It was a great event. It was well attended. You know, back in 2012, I had the opportunity to sit on the design committee under Dave Peters for the design of the Fleming Center. And you know, one of the main things that we looked at during that process was to make that Fleming Center a community hub. And boy, oh boy, looking at that event that day, it certainly was a community hub. So it was great to see, and just reiterate your comments about the staff. And you know, those events just don't happen. There's a lot of work that goes into them, and it was a great event. And hopefully, it's one that we can continue. And I never know when it's the right opportunity to stop saying Happy New Year, but take this opportunity to wish all the residents of Lincoln a healthy and prosperous 2017. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mary Easton. I also enjoyed the New Year's levy very much, and I think a lot of the comments I agree. It was fabulous. It was an excellent location. Families, children, there was so much going on there that day. It was just great. I loved it. There were a lot of children in the craft room. I don't know if people realize there was a craft room, and Canada 150 was there looking for volunteers, and we had our Canada 150 ice wine there for sampling. I hope everyone had a taste, and they'll look to purchase some of it down the road. And as far as the Ice Wine Festival, Mary Easton, I think you did a fantastic job as a model. You stole the show with that red coat and that top hat. And I, too, agree. There are amazing shops down in the Jordan Village, and beautiful, beautiful clothes and fashions. I was really impressed. I really enjoyed that. I must comment on the one-pot cook-off, because a young chef that I know since he's about, well, born, a toddler, he actually won the championship. And his name is Steve Davison. He's an up-and-coming young chef. He works at Inn on the 20. And he cooked his Nona's famous recipe for rabbit stew and took the overall championship. And I'm really proud of Steve and his family. You know, it was really, really exciting. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Steve. So anyway, thank you.
I just want to comment on the ice wine fudge because the museum gift shop had it for sale on Saturday, and I don't know what their sales were on Sunday, but they sold $500 worth of fudge on Saturday, which was just amazing. Yeah, it was very good. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. So I'm going to reiterate the previous two have also said. I really enjoyed the levy this year. I thought it was really good bringing it over to the Fleming Center. I had to admit I've been here at Town Hall for like 15 years in a row, so wasn't quite sure how it was going to turn out, but staff did a great job. I think the skating and having the kids and the adults out on the ice with that, I think, was a terrific idea. So. I think that's now a keeper on the list. The Winter Wine Festival, of course, yes, was this past weekend, and there's been discussion about that. Just to not trying to be picky, but always refer to it as the Winter Wine Festival because the Ice Wine Festival is something totally, completely different within Niagara. Not paid for by the town. It was actually paid for by me. My wife and I went to the dinner on Saturday night with the chef David Rocco, and I must say it was an incredibly good dinner. So I posted pictures for you. I can describe all the tastes for you if you wish, course by course. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McMillan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, the levy and the Tawny Valley Tourism Association Winter Wine Fest, attended both of them, and I think that these are both really excellent events that were for the launch of our celebration year of 2017. Other councillors have talked of it, and you have talked of it, so it's enough just to, at this point, to say really, really pleased in the way that this celebration year is starting out. The other thing that I've been involved with, as everyone knows, is the heritage issues in town. And we had our first meeting of the year on Thursday last week, and we had a chance to meet with Mary Lou Garr, who is a member of the Lincoln History Club and the Lincoln Archives. And she was invited to come and meet with us because the Archives group is planning a plaquing program for this, again, for this celebration year, and the Heritage Club is also doing, or the Heritage Committee is doing a similar item. So it was good to see what they were planning to do and meld that with what the Heritage Committee is planning to do, and it's going to be just a great partnership that's going to be benefit to both groups and overall to the town. So that was a good point to our meeting last week. Thank you.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Again, I was astounded by the levy. I thought it was just absolutely dynamite. Councillor McPherson and I put the blades on and did a couple laps around the ice. That was the first chance I've had to be on the ice this year, and it was fantastic. I attended I'm on the adjudication committee for the Niagara Investment and Culture. We had our first meeting on Thursday, January 5th, where we went through half of the applications. This is the initial phase where each of the adjudicators received the applications. We went through them and we put a grade on them. So now we're reviewing them all. We're going to review the second half of the applications on this Thursday night. Then there's some discussion around the table. We tried to provide input into, some of the applications if others don't know about them, and then we go back and we rescore them. There's some that are in there that we've had discussion about that should they be in there, or is it culture? So I look forward to this week's meeting and keep you in the loop, though I can't because I'm sworn to secrecy, but just letting you know that I've been doing that. And I was able to attend the Canada 150 Committee meeting last week. My work schedule hasn't allowed me to do it, but I told the group, whatever you need done, you know, I'm an email or phone call away. I will do it, and my schedule fits this week that I can attend today. So I have a task. I'm on my task. I've already got a few allocations of product towards the ice wine fudge. So look forward to updating the committee on Thursday.
That's great. People can contribute in many, many ways, just as long as they contribute. Councillor Rinchema.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The levy was a success. One point that I took away from it, that there were people from neighboring municipalities there that came out and they wanted to tell us that there's so much happening in Lincoln, they couldn't wait to come and see what it's all about and talk with us. And I was at Winter Wine Fest, and again, same thing. I talked to people from all over. There was people there that I talked to from Buffalo, from Peterborough, from Sauble Beach. And I was only there for a couple of hours. A great event. And at Chamber of Commerce, we're working on a politician's breakfast, as you know, is going to be February 17th, and the Business Achievement Awards event, which is going to be March 29th, and I'll tell you more about that as details roll out. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to comment on the New Year's levy, yes, it was a huge success, and I spoke to a couple that had not been inside the Fleming Center to that date, and it was a real thrill for them to get inside and see what it was all about. Also very much enjoyed my little hand-holding skate with Councillor Pachariva and the interview that we did, and look forward to seeing that result. Winter Wine Fest, I was there yesterday, and very good crowd for a Sunday afternoon. Of course, they had a beautiful day, but just the whole setup there, I think, lends itself nicely to mingling and getting to meet folks. Nice to see some of our new vendors, such as Bench Brewery was there. So some of the newer folks are getting themselves out there and getting in front of the town. So the BIA, the Beazle BIA, continues to work through the strategy. Our steering committee got together in early January to establish the 2017 goals and create our 5-year work plan. So we're working through that and expect to see the steering committee coming back to council shortly to approve a newly appointed executive board. So we're working towards all of the things that we laid out for council back in November. Thank you.
That's great, Councillor. Good progress. Thank you all very much, and thank you for contributing to such a great beginning of 2017. Now we will move on to the delegation, and I'll ask Laura to come forward, and whoever you're bringing with you, Laura. Laura's here to talk to us about the coldest night of the year challenge.
I got this. All right. Thank you, Mayor Easton and Council, for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Laura Yip. I'm the Resource Development Coordinator for YWCA Niagara Region. And in the gallery with me is actually most of my organizing committee for Coldest Night of the Year. But I want to start tonight by telling you about Lauren. Growing up in Grimsby, Lauren is a personal support worker who always dreamed of becoming a nurse. But life got in the way, as it does for so many people, and she found herself stuck in an abusive relationship with 4 children and a pile of student debt. Inner strength helped her to leave, but finding and then keeping housing for a family of 5 in Grimsby is not easy. Grimsby has the highest cost of living in the Niagara region, and Lauren's $1,400 rent checks were falling behind. And as everyone here knows, finding affordable housing anywhere in West Niagara is extremely difficult to do. So Lauren found herself faced with another hurdle to climb, and that was eviction. now unemployed, unable to find work because daycare options were at odds with her working hours, coupled with a diabetes diagnosis and a sick child. Lauren had 60 days to find a home that she could afford. Moving into shelter would mean taking her children away from their schools, and as a single mother, her only support systems, including her own mother, were all in Grimsby. Thankfully, Lauren discovered YWCA Niagara Region's Grimsby Affordable Housing Partnership, where Lauren was introduced to Cheryl. With Cheryl's help through transitional housing support, Lauren was able to start to take control of her life. She signed up for 3 budgeting workshops to work on her student debt and a 4th workshop to teach her to make weekly meal plans. For the kids, there was a community garden where they each planted their own vegetable, and all summer long they tended that garden and watched their vegetables grow. At the end of the year, they picked what they had and made a big salad as a reward. Lauren was very proud when her youngest daughter remarked that they had made this salad out of nothing. Today, though, Lauren feels like herself again. She's gone back to school. She's now eligible to apply for a nursing program. She has a steady job and can afford a babysitter when she goes out with her friends on occasion. And every day she teaches her children the lessons that she learned through her time in off-site transitional housing. One day a week, she draws one of her children's names from a hat, and their treat is to pick what they want for supper, learn what it costs, and how it's made. They learn that ice cream is a treat when there's room in the budget, and that ribs, while delicious, are simply too expensive. Lauren says that YWCA Gap helped her become self-sufficient and independent, and she feels like her own person now. I think what's really important is to help people understand that Lauren is the kind of person that we see every day through our programs. So YWCA Niagara Region is the largest provider of emergency shelter and the only provider of emergency shelter and transitional housing across the Niagara region. We have 2 20-bed emergency shelters for women, one in St. Catharines and one in Niagara Falls, a 15-bed emergency shelter for men in Niagara Falls, 4 on-site transitional supportive housing units in our emergency shelters, 6 emergency family shelter units around the Niagara region, a 17-unit off-site supportive transitional housing building in St. Catharines, and nearly 70 off-site transitional housing units across the Niagara region. 20 of those off-site transitional housing units are right here in West Niagara. And they're under the Grimsby Affordable Housing Partnership, which became a program of YWCA Niagara Region about 4 years ago. Last year, through GAP, we provided housing and support services to 36 adults with 48 children. And while the report is a bit dated, it was released in 2010, in conversation with our partners at GBF, and based on what we're seeing with our other statistics year over year, there's unfortunately no reason to think that the situation has improved. Grimsby has the highest rate of youth homelessness in the Niagara region. So it's through services that are provided by YWCA Gap, and again with our other community partners, including GBF and Community Care West Niagara, of course, that we can work to fight this problem and support individuals and families who find themselves homeless or at risk of homelessness. What I came to speak to you specifically tonight, though, about is our 2nd annual Coldest Night of the Year walk that's taking place on Saturday, February the 25th at Grimsby Secondary School. It's a 2, 5, or 10-kilometer non-competitive walk, and it's family-friendly. Last year, we held our first walk in Grimsby, again to benefit the Grimsby Affordable Housing Partnership. But this year, given the support that we received from Mayor Joyner for last year's walk, and with the merging of Grimsby Affordable Housing and Lincoln Affordable Housing, we've been asked to stage an event that benefits all 3 communities, which it makes so much sense because we're already serving all 3 communities anyway. Our Coldest Night of the Year walk is the only walk that's taking place in West Niagara. There are 3 other events in the Niagara region. Phelps Homes is our presenting sponsor, having made a 3-year commitment to the event. And we have a significant number of sponsors already throughout West Niagara, including Verhoef Electric, Meridian Credit Union, Conversations Cafe, and Just Cooking right here in Lincoln. We'll also be having a chili cook-off at the end of the walk so that participants can come back into the school, warm up with some chili, and vote for their favorite. Conversations Cafe and Just Cooking will both be taking part in that chili cook-off as well. Last year, we set our fundraising goal for this event at $35,000. We soared past that goal and raised $50,000 for the Grimsby Affordable Housing Partnership. Now, based on the walk this year being for all of West Niagara, we've set the fundraising goal at $60,000. So I know that you're all wondering, of course, how you can help. And Mayor Easton already sort of let the cat out of the bag on this one, so which is a good thing. Mayor Doug Joyner has issued a friendly challenge to this town council as well as to Grimsby Town Council to see who can raise the most money. And Mayor Easton has accepted the challenge, so she'll need your help. This means that you can join Team Lincoln, walk with us and raise some money to help us fight poverty and homelessness. If you haven't already, and I don't know that you have, you'll be receiving information soon from Ms. Chambers about how to register and join the team. I've also left some pledge forms with the clerk. And you can also encourage, and I hope that you will, encourage your friends and family to participate in the walk through their workplaces, through their schools, or through their churches. Again, all of the money that's raised, although the YWCA serves the entire Niagara region, the money that's raised for this event stays here in West Niagara to support individuals and families living in West Niagara. So we hope that you'll join us for an event that promises to be impactful and fun.
Very good. Thank you very much, Laura. Councillors, any questions at all? Councillor Regina?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. So you packed a lot of information into that first, into the beginning of your delegation. It was interesting. Can you tell me what is your greatest need? So when you raise that $60,000, where do you see it going first?
Well, going first, I mean, it helps to provide the transitional support workers to the individuals that are already in the program. Something that we're always looking to do, which is not necessarily what this money is specifically for, is to find more landlords who will sign up with the YW to offer those leases, so that we can provide more affordable housing out here in West Niagara.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Laura, my question was the stat that you have on your last paragraph under the heading Y. So it says that the waiting list within the region is for affordable housing is 12 years, and a lot of this that we're talking about here are funds to stay in West Niagara. Can you tell us what the waiting list for affordable housing is right here in?
Oh, specifically for West Niagara, I don't have that statistic. I know for the Grimsby Affordable Housing Partnership, so 36 adults with 48 children, but also 65 intakes. So we have a waiting list for housing here in West Niagara just through the YW. But Niagara Regional Affordable Housing, I don't know that statistic.
Well, I'm very, very glad to see this challenge from Mayor Joyner, and I think we all accept the challenge. So let's get at it.
And I'll accept your checks.
Thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Councillor Timmers?
Thank you very much for coming out tonight, Laura, and it's definitely a fantastic event. I participated in Coldest Walk last year, and it's great. You know, I would encourage everyone to really get involved, and, you know, the money is very well, it's needed, and it helps a lot of people. And just your comment, Grimsby has the highest number.
Now, it is as I mentioned, it's a 2010 report, but it was done by, in partnership between the region with the assistance of a master's student at Brock and Start Me Up Niagara. And yeah, they found that Grimsby has the highest rate of youth homelessness. Excuse me. But when I was just speaking with GBF the other day, you know, again, it's a 7-year-old report, but I said, do we have any reason to think that has changed? And she agreed, absolutely not, especially with all of our other numbers continuing to increase.
So I really hope everybody comes out and you hit that target of 60,000 this year, and it seems very doable. You did 50,000 last year. So
yeah, I hope so.
I would just encourage everyone to participate because it's a great event, and looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments? Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
We'll do our best.
I'm rooting for you guys.
The next item on the agenda is correspondence. Nothing. And we'll move on then to reports. I have a motion moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Brunet, that minutes of the public meeting of January the 9th, 2017 be received. Any questions to the motion? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. And the planning minutes of January 9th, a motion moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that the minutes of the January 9th, 2017 Planning Committee meeting be adopted as circulated. Any comments or questions? Oh, I'm very sorry, Councillor. Yes, I need to get back into the groove here, don't I? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. For Luke, I'm going to give my movie suggestion this evening, which is The Godfather 3. Both Dave and Paul were away, who are the chair and vice chair, so I had to step in and into the position. So how does Pacino go? Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in again. So there's my bad movie impression. Okay, so first of all, and just before we go any further, there's going to be a motion coming forward as a secondary part of this. We missed one motion at the planning meeting, and that is concerning one of the new items that is required by the province to make mention of the fact that you have done your due diligence on your zoning changes, et cetera, that you have done. So anyway, that motion is going to come secondary to our minutes. We had a delegation that was with us at the beginning of the meeting from Web Planning. Mr. Fred Lozani, who is the developer of the Vista Ridge development, was also there. They were peppered with lots of questions. Councillor Ranjima brought into play the questions on parking. We've both Diane and I have had our share of issues with the Lincoln Square subdivision, and so we want to make sure as we're going forward with this development that we make sure that parking, et cetera, is being properly looked at. The main part of the area, of course, there's an above requirements piece of the puzzle with this, but we have to make sure that the more dense areas are appropriately dealt with. So that was kind of the discussion points going back to staff from that. Mayor Easton also brought up an interesting idea that we should be seeing 3D reviews of these areas as they're bringing forward their applications. There's nothing official in our process or under provincial legislation to do that, but sooner or later all of these developers do that for their marketing purposes. So we look forward to seeing from the developers this type of thing so that it can help us understand better what it is that they're proposing as we're going on. So with that, oh, and yes, Councillor Patriva sat in at the meeting that evening too. It was nice to have Councillor Patriva sitting in. So the first report that we dealt with then was the draft plan of common elements condominium and draft plan of standard condominium application. These were, first of all, this came from the public meeting, but secondly, there were two parts to this. The public meeting was around this common elements condominium agreement, something a little bit new for us to look at. So the public meeting provided input to that, and staff will be coming back to us with a more fulsome report on this in the future. But the standard condominium application piece was passed as part of our motion that evening. This is the section that would be to the west of Serena in the one open block that's still within that development. The second part was the zoning bylaw application by Roger Whitfield. This was essentially a housekeeping item, although Roger did have to go through the zoning process in order to make this happen. A bit bizarre piece of property, but this all had to be switched around in order to make everything come into conformance. So anyway, that was a good piece that we dealt with. The third part was the Vista Ridge zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application. We did go through, again, a pretty fulsome discussion. We also had the director go through the steps that would be followed from this point forward with this particular subdivision. And it's really quite important that I guess we as a council have to decide perhaps at our next planning meeting what we expect to see with this particular subdivision. We have 3 very, very big subdivisions that are coming online, 2 in Beamsville and 1 at Prudhome's. Usually some of these parts are done just by staff, but they can come to committee to be reviewed as well. Site plan, for instance, is one of those. So I think we're going to have a good discussion at our next planning meeting to see what it is that we as a group expect. So what we did was we passed that particular piece, and what these things, of course, are conditional upon a revised draft plan that's coming into play. There's a lot of holding provisions that go into play. We have a standard methodology at this council to put a holding provision onto things, even though in some jurisdictions they don't. The idea is to put the holding provision onto it so that every I is dotted and T is crossed before any development is beginning with these particular developments. That was the gist of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any comments or questions? All right, I'll start with Councillor McPherson, Councillor Pachariva, and then Councillor Rinchima. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just with regards to the Lausanne project, and I did follow up with Councillor Pachariva and heard there was a very wholesome discussion at the planning meeting, and there was some very interesting topics discussed during that meeting, and I didn't see them in the minutes. Discussions around stoplights on King Street and Stadlbauer, stoplight potential at Mountain Street and Hillside. Also a wholesome discussion around the park and development of the park. As well as retail opportunities that may need to be looked at as we build out a development of that size and possibly drawing in other neighbors that a need for a convenience store of some kind. So I just wanted to make comment that it looked like there was some other items within the discussion that I would think we could capture in the minutes that seem to be pretty important items, maybe through to the Acting Chair Foster.
Do you have any reason?
No, I don't disagree. With the minutes and stuff like that have always been a sore point with this council for a number of years. So I think it's also interesting too. The person taking the notes for our minutes or for the meeting, she catches things really well, but you're right, the odd thing does get missed, and so it would be nice to see that within it. So anyway, that's CAO and the clerk have to have more discussions on that.
Thank you.
Good points. All right, now Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And I must apologize because I should have asked that question or this question that night, but through you to Ms. Dale because she might know. With respect to the Common Elements condominium, there was the design of this, Kathleen, is something that's new to the municipality. Had a bungalow on the bottom floor and then two-story units with the parking for the 3 in the back. Just curious, for my own curiosity to be quelled, where might these be in existence now that if we wanted to, we could have a drive-by and just have a look-see? One of the DeSantis developments somewhere, probably closest, has incorporated this. So I'm just curious on that.
Ms. Dale?
Madam Mayor, couple questions here. So in regards to the Common Elements condominium, the Fiera condominium that's also in the Lincoln Square is a Common Elements condominium in that all of those townhouse units are freehold ownership, and then the road and some of the common areas is a Common Elements. So that's one of the applications. Ownership-wise is very similar. In regards to the stacked townhouses, which are actually not going to be, this is where it gets a bit confusing, are not going to be a common element condominium. They're going to be a standard condominium because there's no, you can't attach land to the upper story, so it has to be a what they call a standard condominium. The best of my recollection as to where there's some similar units, but they're actually only two-story, in Stony Creek, along the service road, roughly, I'm trying to think, in the area of Mellon Road, there are some townhouse units that are one unit on the bottom and another unit on the first floor. Actually, the best way to find them is when you drive along into Stony Creek. The garages are near the service road, and you'll sometimes see parking along the service road, and then the units are backing onto the lake. So that's an example. In those cases, those are two-story. In the case of Mr. DeSantis' developments, his stacked townhouses are 3 stories.
And then my second question, and this is probably directed to our CAO, Mr. Kirkopoulos. We had a discussion that night, too, about parkland. You know, the park coming on board. You know, the neighbors up in that subdivision to the north, you know, have been waiting 10 years for Prokich Park to be developed. I understand Mr. Kirkopoulos had a meeting with Mr. Lozani and his group on Friday to discuss that, because we talked about it that night, is that we want to move in a different direction. You know, like a lot of municipalities, you know, Hamilton and Oakville and Burlington, that when a development goes in, you know, the town gives direction and the developer puts the park in. It behooves them to put that, you know, park in place, because then it becomes a feature to help southern units, and it also does us a favor. And I think it's a great strategy that we're trying to develop, because, you know, we do have this park that's sitting there and it's waiting to be developed, and, you know, it's about land acquisition and this and that and the other thing. But we had the discussion that night, and they seemed really open to the idea, and I'm just wondering
what's your question?
I'm wondering how the meeting went on Friday.
Very good.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Pachurivan, and we're talking about Prokich Park. I spoke with Mr. Lozani and his consultant, Mr. Webb, actually before that Friday meeting, and I know Kathleen was in that Friday meeting. I think there's some joint works that can be done here to expedite the process in terms of the developer finishing a certain level of completion as required by the town, and then the town, I think, determining what we want to do with the park development. I should have an update for council, but we have met. There's a significant portion that relates to the previous development that was there that you're referencing, Councillor. So we'll have an update for council in terms of some timelines and when we can have that out the door and completed. And I think it's a similar conversation. I see other developers that are represented here this evening. It's a similar conversation around parks that we're having with all of our developers to ensure that they're brought on board a lot quicker than what we've experienced in the past.
Good points. Thank you very much. Councillor Rinchima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today I came in and I spoke with you about an issue, a concern that you had brought up at this planning meeting about something that we're always concerned about when we have an infill development such as this, and that's compatibility with existing residential development abutting the proposed development. And what we spoke about, in particular for an example, is the issues that we had in Lincoln Square with the end of Alyssa Drive. There's quite a few houses along that area where the road had to be raised, the grading had to be changed to accommodate stormwater flow. And now the people along Hartwood, quite a few of those people along Hartwood, as you know, you spoke to them when you were campaigning as well, have houses that are extremely high behind them and looking into their backyards. So So when we talked today, and our CAO was there, and I'll ask him to, if he can speak to this. We talked about the steps that are going to be happening with this development and how we can make sure as grading is done and the engineering services are done and we go through this whole planning process, that we can be aware of any major changes, really any kind of changes that come to this plan, that somehow they come to us, and that we can have some sort of input into it, and to make sure that there isn't anything major that it becomes to a surprise to us when the subdivision agreement comes to us for approval. Can I ask you, Madam Mayor, through you, to the CAO?
Mr. Kirkopoulos, are you going to?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm going to defer part of that question to Kathleen. Kathleen sent out an update to all of Council earlier today on the Vista Ridge development and the various steps involved in the process as it relates to the proposed plan of subdivision. I think the one comment that I'm going to make is, if there's a need for us to be more communicative as staff and to continue to keep Council updated, I think, by now, most members of Council, if not all, know that I'll endeavor to do that. If there's things that we can learn from in terms of, mistakes or errors or things we may not have done in the past, we will make those changes and continue to keep Council updated. I can assure you there's a number of steps, upwards of 7 or 8 where Council will have an opportunity to provide input. I think what's not captured in the process outline that Kathleen will take you through is the fact that we discussed today, making this kind of a standing item on agendas moving forward, whether it be our committee of the whole around economic development or planning, where on major developments we're providing you more of a briefing on a very regular basis so that Council is aware of what's going on. It may be a simple briefing where it's very high level, things are progressing, you'll be receiving information at the subsequent meeting next month, or it may be more in-depth if we need to share with Council anything that may be happening. We do want to keep it fairly succinct and brief, but identify for Council things that are happening so you're aware. We understand that you're that first conduit to residents, and oftentimes you're being asked by residents. So if we can equip you with those answers, that puts you in a better position and subsequently helps address some of the issues. So I'm going to defer to Kathleen to take you through the various steps, starting at draft plan approval, going all the way down to the approval of a condominium application.
Can I, Madam Mayor, can I ask you a question through the CAO before the Director of Planning starts? So I like the idea of having updates come to. I think it's important enough that it comes to Committee of the Whole and not just to Planning, because when it comes to issues like that, it's all of us that answer to it. Economic Development or Committee of the Whole, either. Yeah, whenever we're all here, I think I would like to see that for sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've got our Committee of the Whole, our new Committee of the Whole structure starting where every other month it will be Economic Development, and the opposite months it will be a general business type Committee of the Whole. So we can definitely talk with talk amongst yourselves, talk with Council, and if it makes sense, it probably makes sense to come to Economic Development. So you'll get an update at that meeting on kind of a every 2-month basis, which may allow us to give you more of a fulsome briefing at each of those meetings. So you'll receive 6 updates throughout the year. As always, if there's things that happen in between those meetings that we think Council should be aware of that are significant enough in scope or change in scope, we'll endeavor to bring those either to Planning Committee or update Council immediately should there be another issue that arises.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Dale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to the Vista Ridge development, what is before Council tonight is the draft approval. Really, what draft approval is really almost like the first step. If you approve the planning minutes, you're approving the road layout, where the singles are going to go, where the street townhouses are going to go, where the block townhouses are going to go, the lands that you're going to be acquiring for park purposes, the small piece that's being added to the storm pond. So in regards to the zoning, they've asked for zoning to permit their singles, their street townhouses, and their block townhouses. There are, attached to the staff report, 62 conditions of draft plan approval. The majority of those will be addressed through the subdivision agreement process, as well as a number of those conditions have to be cleared from a number of other agencies, such as the Conservation Authority in the region. Now, grading is an issue that I think one of the things that staff are going to have to be very, very careful with in as part of reviewing our grading plans for these developments is make sure that there isn't a huge grade change between the existing development and the new development in regards to Vista Ridge. Between where the development starts at the north and where the development ends at the south, there is quite a bit of difference in height. If they did the grading properly, that would be a gradual change, not an abrupt change. So there should be a way to manage that through the engineering process. There's a number of, as I mentioned, a number of conditions of draft plan approval. Some of these are very specific to this development, and some of these are newer conditions that are being imposed. So in particular, this development, there's a need for them to do the development in phasing to address stormwater management. So there's only a portion of the development that can proceed by making the existing pond slightly larger. The balance will have to wait until the future storm detention pond is in place and assumed by the town. They're going to need to do some additional engineering work to look at the upgrades to the water pumping station, because there's pumps and then there's fire pumps, and in order to make sure you have adequate fire flow, should there be a fire anywhere in this area, you need to have that matter has to be addressed. And that's also important because the town is also updating its development charges study. So if there's an additional pump required at the pumping station, that also needs to be put into the development charges study. So that has to be looked at. There is a requirement for an architectural design brief to ensure that what they do is compatible with the adjacent development, and they also have to look at the urban design guidelines. So just compatible doesn't mean exactly the same. It means, it has a lot of the similar characteristics. They will be required to do fire break lots, and that's because when you build a lot of development at once, if there's a fire, everything goes. So any of our new developments have provisions for these fire break lots, and this is somewhat important when you're building street townhouses next to each other. There's going to be warning clauses talking about the use of the garage for parking. We've asked for the provision of a minimum of 40% of on-street parking for the singles and street townhouses. This is something that's used in other municipalities. And then the block townhouses, which are the ones that are labeled as medium density on the plan, those would be addressed through the site plan approval process. As was mentioned, the subdivision agreement will come back to committee and council. At that time, we're going to make sure that grading is properly explained. And before any development takes place, they have to enter into a subdivision agreement and post various securities. They have, as the committee is aware, or council is aware, they have acquired some of the lands immediately to the east. So we do expect that they will be coming back, and they'll have to go through another public process to deal with how they want to develop the adjacent lands to the east. And the zoning for those lands. The advantage of this is it provides another access out to Mountain Street. So they would have two possible ways of dealing with their construction traffic rather than one. The other thing that we, as our CIO has mentioned, between now and then, now in the subdivision agreement process, we'll make sure that there's updates with not just this development, but other developments that are in the works. There are a couple of small parcels that they're negotiating with the adjacent landowner for purchase. We're hoping that will be successful because that will make it a lot easier to develop. Otherwise, they'll have to do some interim solutions to develop around those pieces. There's two pieces in between the two developments. Doesn't affect all of the development, but it does affect one area. The other thing that we're going to start suggesting to developers that when they do their condominium applications, that they do the condominium and the zoning and the site plan approval process concurrently. That way, when you're dealing with the condominium application, the site plan's not already in place, and that will actually, I think, help the process a bit.
That's it, Kathleen?
That's it, sorry.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Renchma.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, can I ask a question to the Director of Planning?
Yes.
Couple of
you may.
questions. I sent you an email today, and I read the response. Asking, I read it in a hurry. I was asking about which part of this is high density. Can you, while I have you, can you just tell me, explain what that means? Which part of it is designated? You said Block 233. That's high density,
Yes. Okay.
right? Is that true?
Yes. Block 233 is a small sliver of land adjacent to the lands that they recently purchased. That's the area that's designated high density in the official plan. So that little sliver of high density lands will be developed with the adjacent lands to the east. So they're not zoning them at this time. They're going to deal with the zoning of that little sliver when they deal with the zoning of the adjacent lands that
Okay,
they've just recently purchased.
Thank you. I see what you're talking about now. So that's the only part of this development that's high density. Okay. And the other question I have is, this draft plan shows that whole section as medium density. What can we do to make sure that, I mean, we know that's high density, the area where the duck barns are. What can we do to make sure that these plans that come to us reflect our official plan and zoning bylaw accurately, so that when we look at them, the public look at them, they know that they have the right information?
Okay.
Mrs. Taylor?
They have asked for, so the two blocks that are labeled as medium density, they're proposing what we refer to as block townhouse units. So they're asking for a residential multiple category. So they're going to have to build those in accordance with the zoning that they've asked for.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm talking about where the duck barns are, that property there. It shows, it's not actually part of this application, but it shows the underlying sort of fabric as being designated as medium density, but it's actually high density. So I was talking about this earlier on today, that when we look at that, I think that confuses us a little bit, even though it's not our plan that we...
Mr. Kirkopoulos is going to address that. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I think just to provide a little bit of context for the rest of the council, I think when we look at this plan, the overlay in terms of some of the GIS work that is done oftentimes just puts categories in areas that aren't part of the existing plan in as whatever the other parts of the plan we're using. In this case, it shows medium density on a part that's already designated high density. I think what the councillor is suggesting is that because these maps become public documents, if we're going to have things on maps, even though they're part of other developments, we shouldn't be putting overlays that say medium density or high density, because one will see it and we know it's all high density in that particular area. And again, it's not part of this particular subdivision. We should just make sure that our maps are accurate. So I think what we need to do from a planning perspective is ensure either we're holding ourselves to that same level of accountability, or we're holding developers who are providing these maps, that when there's things not on the map, not related to this particular development, that they're actually accurately captured.
Well said. So thank you, and I'm happy to see that we're going to have a lot more communication than we may have had in the past as this development goes through over the next few years.
Thank you very much. I think the discussion that we had today was motivated by the questions that Councillor had. Obviously, the development is sufficiently complex enough that sometimes it isn't possible to ask everything when you're in the meeting. However, I think that Councillor Foster's comments and Mr. Kirkopoulos' confirmation, we need a mechanism to expand the opportunities for discussion that include everybody. Otherwise, we won't be able to keep up with what's happening with this. I think that we should not underplay, and I don't believe we are, but I think that just by placing emphasis on the size of the development, the variability in housing types, how they're going to be positioned vis-a-vis their neighbors, and the existing development that's there, the potential for expansion. I think that was the most profound thing that I got out of the discussion today, was the amount of additions to the plan that will happen incrementally. They all make sense. It's just a matter of being able to, understanding that and being ready to respond to them, just as we have to the Lincoln Square development. So there will be considerable phasing. Drainage is extremely important, and I'm pleased to hear that our engineering staff will be taking a very close look and ensuring that we have all the information that we need if things start to go a bit sideways. We also talked about the need for a traffic flow pattern, so that is something that will come up in the future, and that's tied to the comments that Councillor McPherson made about the stoplights that weren't including. And also the terminology on the plan, it absolutely has to be accurate. This is, if a development this size creates all kinds of public questions, the least we can do is ensure that the maps are accurate. So at any rate, thank you very much, Mrs. Dale, for doing that extra work for us. It's very much appreciated. Councillor Pachariva.
Yeah, one other comment, Your Worship, and you were the one that raised it that evening about the ability to the developer of coming up with some type of 3D drawing to be able to look at it at scale, because in the past, and it's a subdivision development, but to the people that live there, it's an infill. So they've been, sitting in their bungalows or 2 stories for 40 years without any, one in their backyard. So we've got to mitigate the change. And in the past, we've run into these problems where this has happened. So I know we talked to the developer that night, but, and Ms. Dale made a point about the grading and all of that kind of stuff. But if we could get that down the road, and you came up with some examples of it, because, if the grading is just a bit off and the road, gets raised, so then, a 2-story with a walkout, because of the change in elevation, actually becomes a 3 or 4-story in actuality, dwarfing over those houses that are there. So as we get further down the road, if we can get those, pieces of technology to put everyone's fears to rest, put our fears to rest, the neighborhood, and we'll have a dynamite development.
Absolutely, and that's what we want. Mr. Kirkopoulos, I know we're going on a tour of the type of work to see the type of work that Losani Homes is engaged in around, I guess, in Stony Creek. But do you have any comments to make about this belief that we have that 3D modeling will help us better understand relationships as well as the transition of housing from one block to another?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely. I think, the type of model that Councillor Pachariva is referencing and that I know you shared with me earlier is something that absolutely would be beneficial. Director Dale and I chatted earlier today about reaching out to developers and planners. Definitely when we're looking at major developments like this, not necessarily on smaller infill type projects, because it becomes a costly endeavor, but definitely on larger projects like this, ensuring that we've got this type of modeling to allow us to see those transitions, and I think to give both the community and council the comfort level that I think you're looking for, that this would be something we can do. I mean, I think there's other things we can definitely go down. We can go down the path of more formalizing it, as we look at urban design briefs and conditions of draft approval. But I think, what Kathleen and I chatted about today was, trying to take the approach of informing developers and planners that this is something that council wants, and seeing the sort of, adoption that they may have of this, and then and trying to take that approach.
Very good. We would not, ladies and gentlemen, normally have this conversation. The minutes were pretty clear about the discussion that we had that night, but this is a pretty good size development, and we certainly want to be prepared to represent the best interests of the community. So I think this commentary is worthwhile. but in the future, we will certainly work toward having these types of discussions either at Committee of the Whole or one of the other committee meetings. So I've read the motion. Your pleasure on the motion. The motion's carried. And I have a second motion moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Timmers. This is a compliance motion. The Planning Committee and Council considered all of the written and oral submissions and agrees with the planning report analysis and recommendations and finds that, subject to the conditions of approval, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Region official plan, and the town official plan. Your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the confirmation of compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that Council has considered the requirements of paragraph 17 of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, and concludes that no further notice of public meeting is required in the matter of the following proposed amendments to zoning bylaw number 9314-Z1. Number 2017-03-Z485 to amend zoning bylaw number 93-14-Z1 as amended, Tintern Church of Christ. Any other questions to the motion? Your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Brunet that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Number 2017-01 to provide for borrowing for current expenditures not to exceed $21,700,000. Number 2017-02 to provide for interim tax levies for the year 2017. Number 2017-03-Z485 to amend zoning bylaw 93-14-Z1 as amended, Tintern Church of Christ. Number 2017-04 to authorize the site plan agreement, Cuesta Estates and Winery, Inc. And number 2017-05 to authorize an agreement, St. John's Public Cemetery. Are there any questions to any of these? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one question that's dealing with the bylaw 2017-04 and to do with Cuesta Estates and Winery.
Yes.
That when this development was looked at the planning stage at committee level, there were very significant heritage issues involved with this piece of property. And I know that those were discussed and they were part of, and still are part of, the planning documents dealing with it. My question is that because they are very significant buildings on this property, do these need to be identified within the bylaw, or is it information that is in the planning documents sufficient enough to protect those properties?
Okay, good question. Mr. Kirkopoulos, can you help us?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm going to defer to Kathleen to answer that question.
Mrs. Dale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to this particular bylaw is to authorize the execution of the site plan agreement. There was a, before our Director of Sport and Recreation Culture left, he had actually arranged for a heritage review of that particular property. So a lot of that is being looked at as part of the site plan review, because as part of the addition to the building, the applicants are taking that into account. The only thing that we weren't sure about is, before the Director of Sport and Recreation Culture had left, is whether that information had been provided back to the Heritage Committee. So I know there was an email last week, and I was going to check with one of my staff to make sure that the Heritage Committee actually had a copy of that report.
Thank you very much.
Good. Anyone else? Any other items that you want to lift out to address? There being none, your pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunei and seconded by Councillor Timmers that bylaws number 2017-01-02-03-Z485, 2017-04, and 2017-05 read a first time be now read a second and third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Are there any councillor inquiries? Councillor Pachariva.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to the CAO. Was out walking the dog on the weekend and just wondering an update on the old A.S. Kimberley building between Tallman's and Dean Allison's office that's, you know, in contravention of our zoning bylaw that doesn't allow for residential on the ground floor.
Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is an issue that we have discussed with our bylaw officer in terms of attending that site and dealing with a few items. There's two items as I see that site. One is the contraventions around the waste and some of the garbage that's put out in front. Secondary to that, and probably the more bigger issue that we need to address from a zoning perspective, is some of the work or some of the issues that are occurring at the ground floor in terms of the use that's not a permitted use as it relates to that. I've also reached out, though, to the property owner, and we'll be setting up a meeting, if possible, this week or next week to address that, and the particular issue around our desire to have some sort of ground floor commercial in that particular area, which is always what the intent was, versus when I look at the BIA, it's something that I know the BIA brings up to me fairly regularly. So, you know, we're trying to approach it, I think, and I think a couple of ways, and so I will ensure that council is updated once those meetings take place.
I appreciate that because, you know, there's, like I say, the two issues of that and, you know, just a simple conversation that the bylaw officer maybe has with them. You know, garbage day is Wednesday, so your garbage needs to be out Tuesday night. You need to tie your bag up. It doesn't go out Thursday. And, you know, if it's missed, then you bring it back in. Or, you know, we have the discussion that, you know what, maybe we don't have garbage on King Street. Maybe it's picked up behind like it is on North Lane. You know, the BIA is working as hard as they can to, you know, bring some new vim and vitality, and, you know, we've got the potential development at the old Mr. Inconvenience. You know what? Things need to change. Status quo is no longer acceptable, and I appreciate any movement in changing that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the particular issue around garbage collection, when I met with the BIA in mid-December, that was one of the comments that I had thrown out to them and wanted input on in terms of looking at garbage collection happening in the rear and figuring out how we facilitate that through the region and waste management, whether that be having things located in a central location and determining whether we need a bin there and how that would be addressed, or finding an appropriate spot behind those buildings to have garbage collection, because it is an issue. I know Councillor McPherson was aware of that as we briefed him following that meeting, but definitely something the BIA is, I think, on for. There wasn't a lot of pushback. For me, the first step was making sure that the BIA was on board and them talking to all the business owners along the south side.
Just a moment, Councillor. Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkopoulos. Councillor Bonet, you were next, but is your issue related to either of these issues? Then I'm going to allow, with your permission, Councillor McPherson, because I think he has a thread to this.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And just in a follow-up to CAO Kirkopoulos's visit to the BIA meeting, we are meeting again this Thursday, and that is an agenda item for us, is the follow-up to the discussion. And also, we do have on that meeting agenda the discussion around the building in question, and in a BIA request of the town to make a move there and to resolve the issue. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Brunet, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. My inquiry is regarding the current GO Bus Route 12 stop at the end of Ontario Street and the service road. So as we all know, I think we're 4 months into the operation of that bus stop now. I think it launched in Labor Day weekend. So just to kind of set up my inquiry, we all know that everything we're talking about, all the development we're looking at, everything ties into this future GO station. We have municipal transit on our radar to ensure that we're meeting those requirements of our residents and students to have mobility freedom, which means getting them to a GO station. And recently we've launched our first meeting of our active transportation. So it's important that we're going to continue to make sure that we have people that are walking and riding to have easy access to that GO station. So my inquiry relates to, I guess through you, Madam Mayor, to the CAO, to see if Mike can bring us up to speed and maybe be very cognizant as we go into the first quarter. Do we know what type of ridership we're currently seeing in the first 4 months? If we do, great. If you could comment on that. If you don't, maybe we could look at getting that from Metrolinx. Number two, now that we have Carrie Beattie on board as our communications person, I'm still talking to people on a fairly regular basis that are not aware that we have a GO station bus stop at the bottom of Ontario. So whatever we can be doing to make that awareness out there through Carrie, through social media, through our website, I think is vital. And then the last thing, we have that stop, but I'm sure, especially in the wintertime, we've got people that aren't using it for obvious reasons. So I think it's very important, and through you, Madam Mayor, to the CAO, I hope that we can, maybe get a staff report in the first quarter of 2017 that can talk about, what our plans are for future enhancements at that GO station in terms of, sidewalks and, to make sure that our residents are getting to that bus station in a safe manner, and also, whether we have plans for a bus shelter so that we can maximize, their ridership, because maybe there's people that just, aren't willing at this point to use it because, it's not up to what it needs to be. And I realize it's just a start, but I think, we need to demonstrate to Metrolinx, that we're very strong and we're very positive in the community, that we're embracing this, so that we make sure that as we move forward, we're going to have a GO station in the future. So I know it's early, but I think with all the things that we've going on, with Carrie now on board, and with active transportation, that we keep all these things, on our front mirror, not our rear mirror. So through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask the CAO to comment on some of that, please.
Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, let me try to answer your first question, Councillor. The broader GO group meets with Metrolinx on a monthly basis. We've got a meeting at the end of this month coming up. One of the issues we talk about, in addition to GO train service, is the GO bus service that we've got here. I don't have any metrics right now or any data that I can share with you, but that'll be one of the things that I know they are monitoring. They are looking at it. There's some additional tweaks that they're going to make in terms of time to connect people to Niagara College. So I know they are monitoring it. I know they are working on it, and that is something that I think we need to, we need to get more information on, and we need to share. Definitely from the perspective of the work that we are doing here in the town, I think we need to get that information out there. I can tell you anecdotally, every time I drive by it, there's someone waiting there to pick it up. I've heard from some residents and some individuals the issue around the inclement weather and how are we connecting people. I can tell you the last update that I received in mid-December, on December 15th, from Chris Burke, who is one of the directors with Metrolinx in charge of procurement and design, was that the work to upgrade the Beamsville Park ride and facility, which is an MTA-owned carpool lot, in its totality is going to take probably over a year, and that is, scoping, approving, procuring, designing, and building the facilities. there's definitely an awareness and a recognition that some temporary measures need to be taken to provide shelter in advance of the full build. And I can share with you that while they haven't shared the design for the full build, it is a fairly extensive full build that they would like to do there. They are going to share with me that information. It likely won't be in place for this winter season. I know I've suggested that is there something we can do from the town's perspective, both to make access to that site possible, as well as to put some temporary measures. Dave Graham, our Director of Public Works, and I continue to be in contact with Metrolinx and are actually going to go up and meet with them to see if there's something that we can do from the town's perspective to address that temporary measure. But MTO and Metrolinx definitely want to do something from a temporary standpoint to address that until the full scope, approval, procurement, and design of the facility that they want there is in place. I think the fact that they're having these conversations with us shows their commitment to making this a permanent stop, which I think is something that that we just need to recognize, and I think be aware of. I think always when you add additional stops and that adds timing, you need to look at what does that timing do. I know Niagara College has wanted some tweaks in the system just to make sure that people and students are arriving at the appropriate time. So the Beamsville Park and Ride facility is something that is a priority for us. I do hear your comment around connectivity and ensuring that whatever kind of intra-municipal transit service we have, that there is better connections to that particular site, and anything that we can do from a staff perspective, from a local perspective, cognizant that it isn't our site, we will do. But I will definitely take this issue back to Chris Burke and Metrolinx when we meet, and in between now and then determine what it is, if anything, that we can do with our Director of Public Works and I in terms of some measures that we can put in place.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we have not talked about this at all, so Mike, that's a great response, and look forward to hearing the updates. It sounds like you're on top of it, and you're keeping it well in front of you, and you'll keep us informed. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Next item. Councillor Rinchema.
Are we in announcements?
Pardon?
Are we in announcements?
No. As a matter of fact, unless you have any councillor inquiries, we're at notice of motion. Does anyone have any notice of motion? No? Very good. Now we're at announcements. You're on.
That worked out well for me. So, the ARC, there's a second ARC review meeting in Grimsby, January 26th at Grimsby High School. I'm going to go and check out what that's all about and see what's happening at this stage in that review. It's going to be interesting. Community Care of West Niagara has an open house January 20th from 3 to 4:30. What I'm not sure is if that's open to the public. I think the invitation may have just gone out to council. Not sure. They're going to be showing the new edition that they put on the back. And Councillor Foster and I are going to be having a ward meeting January 24th from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in Meeting Room A at the Fleming Centre, and that's the meeting room beside the library. All are welcome to come out and talk about any issues that they see that they think should be a priority in Ward 1. It's an open forum meeting. Director Dave Graham will be there to help us out to talk about future developments such as the work that's going to go on in the Drake survey, and he's always a good person to have around.
Very good. All right. Anyone else? No more announcements. We have no closed session. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rinchema, seconded by Councillor McMillan, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaw, number 2017-06, to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by council resolution. A pleasure on the motion. Motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rinchema, seconded by Councillor McPherson, that bylaw number 2017-06, read a first time, be now read a second and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Pleasure on the motion. Motion is carried. And the business of this first council meeting of 2017, having been dealt with as published and circulated, is now adjourned.